How did you mess around with the computers at school? Story 1. There is always the classic. Take a screenshot of the desktop, set it as desktop background and remove all icons from desktop. Especially fun if the teacher just needs to use the computer to show something and not a computer's teacher. Story 2. I remember sneaking into the library on Monday morning and starting the download for GTA 1 on the computers. If nobody noticed, we could usually play it by Wednesday afternoon. It was usually discovered by the weekend and deleted, so a few weeks later we would start again. Story 3. I remember being bored during IT class when I was about 16 and I was messing around on a spreadsheet. I highlighted certain cells to spell out FUCK in giant letters when the mouse pointer suddenly started moving around on its own and clicked on the corner of the screen to bring up my username. About a minute later the computer technician came into the room and called my name and asked me what I thought I was doing and told me to stop it. It was my first experience of computer surveillance and I felt absolutely violated. Story 4. Printed a picture of Matthew Lesko remotely from the library, printing off in a teacher's classroom. I thought that was weak, so printed 99,999 more. For some reason, the print job couldn't be cancelled. Even after unplugging and restarting it, the Leskos kept coming. They printed for days. There were stacks of Leskos several inches high each at the back of that classroom. All our assignments and progress reports were printed on the backs of those Matthew Lesko papers for the next 2 years. Story 5. I used to take out all the from the computer mouses, until at one point we were given assigned seats and had to flip the mouse over to show the ball was still there before and after class. Story 6. A classmate ended up removing the ball of the mouse. Computers were still new, and the teacher assigned top the lab was actually a language teacher. She flipped. She thought the school will get the new mouse from her salary. The ruckus she created was a scene worth watching. We had type of folder system and it was called something like shared area where the teachers would put work for us to do. Us however discovered several folders made by some students which consisted of mostly games. But one folder had a folder of folders which basically said click this, click me, keep clicking, carry one, you can do it. Nearly there. And in the last folder there was just a picture of Gandhi in it. Story 7. Before school computers took out the ability to use command prompt telnet, I would use telnet to connect to some server which would play Star Wars 4. It was the full move, except the entire thing was made out of different text characters. Who in the world has the time to create that? I have no idea. Story 8. Games weren't allowed on computers so they were all deleted. I emailed Solitaire and Minesweeper to myself from home and reinstalled them. Also, if I sat close enough to a projector in class I'd pull out the AV plugs just enough so they wouldn't make contact but would still look like they were plugged in. Did this at the end of class of course, so I wouldn't be in the room when the issue was discovered. Story 9. I put the circular magnet on the monitor because it made this cool kaleidoscope effect on the screen. I started rubbing it around because it looked so cool and when I took the magnet off the screen stayed that way. I was in 7th grade and ended up getting Saturday school. Story 10. We made a shortcut to shut down. exe shown as Google Chrome. When clicked, it displays this message: your PC is infected with virus. Please contact the administrator. Also, there's a 10-second countdown before it turns off. Story 11. This is circa 1996, so network printers didn't track pages well. You'll call the teacher Mr. L, open paint, draw a diagonal line in black across the whole page, print 30 copies. Mr. L hears the printer whir and keep going. He knows Noon has a reason to print so he goes to investigate. Okay, who's the that did this? Silence. Then the printer starts spitting out it was me sir in 72-point font, 20 times. Mr. L replies stop wasting paper. If I find out who this was they are getting detention. 72-point font again, sorry sir. I won't do it again. The next year we discovered the Excel 95 maybe 97 developer credits environment. That was fun to mess around in. Story 12. Not really messing with the computers themselves, but my teacher always forgot to make the hyperlink databases for projects view only, so we always ended up with or Rick Astley. Story 13. A kid I knew who was good with computers wrote a script that refreshed the school's homepage every 3 minutes. He installed it on about 40 computers. No one noticed anything for a while, but after a month or so, the view counter on the homepage, because our school website was apparently designed by a blog mom from 1998, was up to several million views. Nobody could figure out what was going on, and for some reason the school's resident rent-a-cop was the one responsible for the website, so this computer-illiterate old crank had to fix it. He system restored every computer in the library and both computer labs. The next week, that kid installed it again, except he had them refresh every few seconds. Story 14. Back at my old school, you had a screen you had to press Ctrl-Alt-Delete on to get to the screen where you input your username password to log in. On the first screen, if you pressed enter, it would bring up the help screen telling you how to press Ctrl-Alt-Delete. No, seriously. Then if you pressed enter again, it'd take you right back to the start screen. So what we'd do is carefully rest the mouse on the enter key on the right-hand side of the keyboard, which would cause the computer to rapidly flash between the start and help screen. We'd do this to all the computers and create a beautiful seizure-inducing gallery of flashing computers. Drove the teachers nuts. Story 15. In high school, our computer labs had a lot of peripheral devices connected to the network such as printers, scanners and so on, and there were like 35 to 40 devices in total. The admin who set up the whole thing didn't bother changing any of the default administrative usernames or passwords for any of those devices. As they hadn't been changed, you could simply look them up online if you knew the model number. So me and my friend changed all the passwords for the devices and proceeded to give stupid names to every device such as printer MC Printyface or changing icons of scanners to printers and the other way around. The whole network was a confusing mess for months. We weren't able to get remote access to any of the school internal software as those were secure multi-layer passwords. We had sorts of televisions in the halls, cafeteria, and so on where announcements would be displayed such as when a class was dismissed or the class was held in a different classroom. We were able to access the TVs as pieces of hardware connected to the network rather than through the internal software system connected to the secretariat's computers. We didn't want to get in trouble, so all we did was to turn them off at random times, which still caused a lot of problems. The funniest thing we did was denying access to the school's intercom to the principal's computer. He would usually make daily announcements and allow only the computers we used to access it. We only used it once to play a loud sound throughout the whole school. They ended up resetting all the devices at the end of the school year. They never caught me and my friend, although they tried. Fun times. Story 16-0. This one right here is a classic. At my high school, our computer teacher, a woman I'll call Mrs. Goose, had no idea how computers actually worked. This woman had no idea how to do anything. It got to the point where one student convinced Mrs. Goose once that the only way to fix a computer with a certain problem was to put it in a dark room. Mrs. Goose put the computer in her closet for a week. Then after she removed it, the student quickly made the very easy fix himself, without Mrs. Goose noticing. To this day she believes that the fix to any problem is to put the hard drive in a dark room. Anyway, so in this class, I had two friends. One of them, a kid I'll call Mario, decided to mess with my other friend, Alex. Mario found an image of Billy Harrington NSFW and made it his desktop background. Later on, some kid made literal his desktop background. IT removed it from his computer, then made some kind of system-wide policy where you couldn't change your desktop background. They thought this would be an easy fix. Problem is, Alex was still stuck with Billy Harrington as his background and he had no way to change it. Luckily Mrs. Goose had no idea how to use the multiple monitor viewer program at her computer, but she often did walk around the class. For the next year, poor Alex had to hide that desktop background from her whenever she walked by. Mario thought it was hilarious. Story 17. My high school was pretty new. At the time, they had only been open for only about 3 to 4 years, but for some reason they didn't put any locks on the desktop cases, so my friend opened the case and stole the 2 GB RAMs. He disabled like 10 PCs this way. I don't know if he used the parts to build his own PC or if he sold them. I think he did it to annoy the staff at the library. Story 18. At my high school the computers were all Macs. Macs don't have the desktop icon restrictions Windows has. New folder, copy, paste, repeat. Every copy and paste double the amount of folders. After a short period of time there is a few 100,000 empty folders. Eventually the computer can't handle copying and pasting anymore, and then freezes. Story 19. In 7th grade our computers were all Macs with the same password. If your class had to use them the teacher would rent out the cart. The Macs had a screen share setting that required another Mac's password, which were all the same. It basically let you control another Mac at the same time as someone else. No one really knew about it. So me and a couple of friends started hijacking other people's MacBooks. It started out as just a joke, but escalated quickly. We started typing scary things in the search bar like run away and whatnot. The plan, we wanted them to think it was a ghost, but they thought it was a terrorist attack. Then fun was over when some idiot hijacked the MacBook that the teacher was using. They caught one kid, and the rest of us went free, until that one kid had snitched on all of us by the time lunch rolled around. It was a big deal. They called the cops and did a bunch of other extra. Surprised I didn't get suspended or something. They just called home, so yeah, you could do that. Story 20. While playing Speedway Math in elementary school right around 1989, I used OFF Jack as my name, so when I got a high score, the top 10 list would display my name as Jack Off. I had no idea what the phrase meant, just that it was dirty. I had several of the top scores in my classroom, and the teacher had no idea. I did the same dumb joke in another classroom and the teacher saw it when I wasn't there and my friend immediately told him I was responsible. One very uncomfortable conversation with 3 teachers about the phrase Jack, OFF, and I lost computer privileges for the rest of the term. Story 21. In high school my robotics team kept putting Halo on the computers in the robotics lab, just a computer lab where we worked on the robot, and IT kept taking it off. Eventually he made it so the system wouldn't allow you to open it. We got around that by using another program, GameSpy, to open it. Story 22. Some guy wrote a plugin that opened tab after tab of furry fetishes included as revenge for another fake gang messing with his fake gang. Since we all used one admin account, it installed itself on every instance of Chrome. Complete chaos as nobody knew what was going on. The issue was only exacerbated when it spread to the elementary school. Story 23. Not me, but a classmate. He bit off the corners of a Pop-Tart so it could fit into the disk drive and closed it. When he opened it back up, it was gone. Story 24. Open command line. Then force open a second command line as system. Then close the first command line. Then force close Explorer exe. Then uses the system command line to open a copy of Explorer exe as system. Bam, 90 of the restrictions on the computer's gone. Bonus, after that everything you do is system and not my username. So if I had done something punishable they would have had to do more digging than their incompetent IT staff would have been able to do. Story 25. In elementary school, one of my friends got a hold of the admin password to the computers, so we decided to change the icons and names of the shortcuts. So, we went on every computer and rerouted all of the shortcuts to random websites. I believe we put some satanic ritual site in place of Internet Explorer. Never got caught. Story 26 made myself an admin, and played games and watched movies the rest of the semester. Moral of the story: change the default password if you use Novell software. Story 27 I got 2 for starters in a computer programming class in high school. One day, flash drive with a single program got passed around. Everyone copied it to their machines. It was the multiplayer mode of Halo 1. We all played LAN whenever my teacher left the room, which was often. When it got discovered, they tried to block it, but if you went into one of the folders and changed the name, the system treated it like a different program. Cue an entire year spent playing Halo. I also figured out my school blocker would cover any non-school approved type YouTube videos. It didn't block videos uploaded by personal accounts, so all it took was downloading any video I wanted to watch at home and re-upload as private on my personal channel. Story 28 I never did anything, but my best friend put an entire turkey sandwich inside the case of one of the computers in the video production room. He told me that it eventually started to give off a nasty smell, and when the teacher eventually pinpointed it, he freaked the out. It had mayo, lettuce, and tomato on it too. It must have smelled terrible inside of that warm computer case. Story 29 When signing off, sometimes the program would freeze before going to the login screen, and at that moment you could open the start menu and uninstall the program that prevents you from doing anything. From there I checked every drive starting at C all the way to Z. So much interesting. Was able to change scores and names on the program to learn to type. Even had access to the HTML templates they used for the school when updating the website to show events and stuff. It was fun changing the template every couple weeks and watch it make its way to their website. Story 30 Before XPSP2 the messenger service was enabled by default on all computers. Any PC on the LAN would receive messages sent by any PC. Created a batch file net, send you are gay, and the second line was the batch file name. Put the batch file in the startup folder for all users. Whoever logged on the PC next would unknowingly kick off the batch file at login, and the whole campus instantly knew they were gay. Story 31 There was a way to have a message show up on every computer in the school. The only problem was the tech teacher could figure out what computer it came from, so you just had to wait for a student to leave his computer momentarily while you sent your message out. The principal was pretty pissed when a message stating he liked to came up on his screen and every other screen. Story 32 When someone left their computer, I would hold Ctrl W to open 1,000 new windows, change their homepage to something inappropriate, set a command that pressing a certain key will reset their computer. Story 33 The school attendance and grade software was a custom DOS application that required teacher login and password. However, the network did not require any credentials to log in, and the drive could be mapped to any lab computer. The application used an unencrypted FoxPro database. I routinely edited the database directly to clear absences and missed classes. Story 34 Provably too late to be popular, but I have a really good story about this. Worth the read if you ask me. We had these Mac computers at school that were all on the same network. The student accounts were very limited, obviously, but they forgot to disable single user mode command line type thing. Basically a terminal with root access. I did some searching online and found some commands I could do. The best one deletes the file that told the computer it had already been set up, so it puts you through the orientation process, including the part where you make the first administrator account. It didn't actually delete any real files. The only actual result was the creation of an admin account. I wrote down this code and gave it to some friends, and eventually there were probably 25 or so computers we had admin access on. We named them all the same thing, and gave them all the same password. One day we figured out we could use our admin privileges to remote into the other computers we had hacked, so we went into a desktop computer in a different room, opened up YouTube and the photo booth application so we could see out of the camera, and started playing Gangnam Style on full volume. We could see some of the kids absolutely losing it, and we were laughing our asses off in the back of health class. Later that year I was walking into the local public library, and I saw the school's tech guy and the teacher of the class we disrupted talking. Tech guy was describing exactly how we did it, down to which commands we used. We stopped doing it after that. Never did get caught. Story 35 I had a flash drive that you could plug in for a second AD. It would create a text file onto the drive of all usernames and passwords for all the browsers on the computer. Story 36 Last year, in ICT IT class, me and my friend got bored, so we took the letters out of the keyboards in the laptops and arranged them so it spelled penis. We were never caught, even though the teacher talked about it the next lesson we had. Story 37 Our finals were on the computer, and they just used a standard borderless windowed application, meaning there was no X, full screen or minimize button. That didn't stop me from alt-tabbing out and playing games when I was done. Edit second one. Our entire school, about 3,000, discover Curvatron 1 year. Now the game Matthew you with the closest players it can, so basically our entire school was playing with each other. I mean, you could walk into any room and there were at least 3 people playing it. Me, being the handsome rogue that I am, made a lobby called Famously Attractive Student, got a fat, and made that same lobby every single day. And every day, dozens of people would join. One time almost 150 in there. The best part is, this girl sat like 2 seats away from me in one of my classes, and no had any idea it was me. Story 38. Back in high school we figured out that if you knew the IP address of a given computer on the network you could use a command to send it a message that would pop up as dialog box on the other computer. It became a funny way to send messages in our programming class. Then someone figured out you could send it to a whole range of computers. All the county schools were linked together for file sharing and the like. Well, someone sent a message to every high school in the central office. He had to spend the rest of the semester completing his work without touching a computer in the school, in a programming class. Story 39. I'm old. We had pre-PC computers linked to a primitive network. The network could push data directly into the computer memory so that a teacher could get everyone working on the same thing. Or some idiot could push random numbers into the sound buffer. People's computer would suddenly burst out with terrible noises. Story 40. Back in the days on BBS PRE Internet. Set up a computer in the back room at library. Connected 2 modems, incoming and outgoing. Set up modem relay that I could call after the school closed and then dial long-distance BBSS and services by tapping into the outgoing school's phone line. I printed a sign saying computer must remain on for library system to work. This lasted for over 4 years. Story 41. I would open the cases and swap the A and B floppy cables. It was fun to watch someone think that the DOS boot disk was bad. Yep, there was a time when people did not have hard drives in the PC. Story 42. Back in the day, you could put an endless loop in AutoExec, but I saved the computer afterwards, earning me privileges and the aura of a computer wizard, which I kinda was, but still nice to have them know that. I also got the exam questions of physics when I was 17 through a Trojan with a keylogger. Story 43. This was the late 80s. Everybody had to have their own floppy that had DOS on it to boot from, which you also stored your projects on. When a computer was turned on without a floppy, it had text saying insert boot disk and press enter. I wrote a program in BASIC that looked just like that screen, but when you pressed enter it would start beeping, and the screen would fill with multicolored text saying HA and otherwise taunt the victim while it formatted the floppy. A less obnoxious thing I did was making several programs that played the clean guitar part of one by Metallica in different octaves. I came in during lunch and loaded versions of that program on every computer and left them playing in sync. The computer teacher talked about the days she came to class and all the computers were singing to her for some time after that. Oh, I just reminded myself of something pretty bad. I copied a basic version of the old program Eliza, which simulated a conversation with a user, but I changed nearly all the text so you were speaking to a rude and abusive man speaking in a black vernacular, e.g. where Eliza would say tell me more about your mother if mom or mother was in your input. Leroy would tell a yo mama joke or claim to have had intercourse with her. This program was hugely popular with my fellow East Texas students, and by the end of the year most of them had a copy on their boot disk. I'm so sorry, and at 17, I claim I wasn't racist because I had a couple of black friends and didn't think blacks were genetically inferior. I just had no respect for their culture. I've grown a lot in the last 30 years. Story 44. CTRL keys. Flip all the monitors in the room around. One time I made a bat file that copied the Wi-Fi config to plain text. I asked a teacher to get me something from out of the room and put it in his laptop so I could get access to the unfiltered or less filtered staff admin Wi-Fi. I was a legend around my friends, but I had to keep it quiet. I never got found out. One time I locked all the computers in one room with a BIOS password. That did get me in because our IT techs didn't know about taking out the CMO's battery. How they had a job I'll never know. And of course the classic, I had a 16 GB memory pen with portable Counter-Strike 1, 6, Age of Empires 2, Unreal Tournament 99, my business classes or any computer room classes for that matter turned into huge lawn parties very quickly. Story 45. Either flipped the display of the home screen upside down, or opened up Brewer and turned off the monitor. Sometimes I would also get rid of the top of the browser so the red X was gone. Story 46. Used to play this game called Outwar. The goal essentially was to get people to click on a personalized link, and every time someone clicked it you got like experience points. So I downloaded this program on like 20 computers that would create fake AOL instant messenger screen names like Lil Britney 69XXX and spam AOL chat rooms with links that said check out my sexy pics, that would redirect to my link. Well, that program gave every computer some nasty viruses. Story 47. I was head of my school's broadcasting department my senior year. We had the best computers in the school because oh how intensive video editing software can get on PCs. The school also gave us our own drive on the server to store basically an unlimited amount of stud fun. We had Left 4 Dead 2 installed on a portable hard drive and routinely play that. I also convinced the teacher I needed several very expensive DVDs of special effects presets for action movies which were purchased with the school's money, and then I took home and copied. Story 48. My teacher uses MacBook, and they are really easy to break into, change passwords, etc. I gave my friend one from English exam. He wanted a proof that it's possible to get one on exam. Teacher corrected it and everybody lives happy and long. Story 49. Disguised a piece of code to crash the computer as Chrome. Chrome was no longer used in my school. A few weeks later the IT department in my school is non-existent. Story 50. I used to put a VBS script disguised as a browser shortcut in the desktop. When the script was opened the CD tray started to open and close periodically. Some people even thought it was a hacker. Story 51. Many of the students brought games in on their 3.5 floppy, same one that contained their saved classwork. This was back in the early 90s so computer geeks were few and far between. I was 1 and used to work in a local computer store, building systems, selling software, etc. I had already taken typing class, programming class, and this was simply info processing, so I was already done with the classwork for the year with 2 months to go. My teacher was tired of trying to find other things for me to do, and he knew the others played games despite repeated warnings. He asked if there was something I could do to teach them a lesson. I asked how far was too far, and he said run with it. The students had used a batch file to load the game, and it was stored on the hard drive, and I had access to the lab anytime I wanted, so I went in and changed all the batch commands to format echo Y. At the next class, the look of utter horror hit about 5 to 6 of them as they lost everything on their work disk. All the work for the entire semester. They went to the teacher and said their disk was erased and they had nothing left. He smiled, chuckled when he realized it was my doing, and said I guess you have a lot of work to do to catch up. Story 52. I was in a CS class and managed to trick a kid into writing the Java code to shut down their computer. That was the first and only time anyone fell for that. Story 53. Switched the mice for 2 computers next to each other on a kid I knew was prone to having a quick temper. He sat down, saw mouse wasn't functioning on his screen, proceeded to start slamming the mouse down in a fit of rage, grumbling, "What is wrong with this?" Me personally, but a friend saw the teacher enter their admin password. The following day they removed all the access limitations, blocked websites, etc., downloaded games to the local network, completely changed all the other teachers' access so they couldn't change it all back, changed the teachers' login names to rude words. A teacher was called Mounter, so his username was changed to Monther. Other changes included noises on computer startups, background changes so the screensaver was etc. Anyway, they had to call in some outside technicians to reset everything, which took about a week to get them in. During that time we had free reign over everything. Story 54 made a pop-up appear that said Rincon sucks on every computer at Rincon High School. All the way from my computer at another school, you could literally see the entire school district's network from any computer. Simpler times. Story 55. I changed the wallpaper into something funny or turned the sound all the way up before leaving, knowing the next person to get on it would get an earful of the Windows load up sound, which no one wants to hear at max volume, and I also installed Slender on a few computers at my school. My favorite story though is that I changed the wallpaper on a laptop to a Mega Milk meme and then turned the laptop back into where I got it when I was finished. A teacher eventually grabbed the laptop I used and hooked it up to the projector in the class to show us something, and the class wound up seeing big anime titties. The teacher was shocked and embarrassed, so I feel a little bad for that one, but it was still funny. Story 56. Friends and I used to jam house keys in the USB slots of our friends' computers mid-assignment. The screen would go plaid and it would emit a god-awful, high-pitched screech if the volume happened to be on. Another one of my friends was a computer genius and put Counter-Strike in the registry of a library computer, and students could then download it from any computer in the school and play together, if they knew where to look. We rotated the computer screens upside down in the engineering class on a day where the teacher was supposed to install a new program. Poor guy forgot how to undo it, called a few tech buddies who laughed and didn't tell him, and he had to install the program on all 20 computers upside down for the day, until we helped him fix it later on. Lastly, that same genius friend tried circumventing the computer security and found out that guest, admin, administrator, and or blank all worked. Whoever does school security is terrible. Story 57. Not at school, but I do this to coworker computers when they leave them unlocked and unattended. Install a Chrome extension called Ncage. Thanks to me, everyone locks their computer before leaving it unattended. Story 58. A mate set all the screens in the room with a picture of a, don't know how he did it, but I saw it and it still makes me cry, laugh to this day. The teacher cried and called IT. The teacher of IT called IE. Story 59. We would mess with our computer teacher that didn't know about her job. No idea how she got hired. Pretty sure she just made designs in MS Paint for a weather network. Most often we would start off with one of us putting our computer into high contrast mode with left alt left shift print screen and calling her over to look at it. Then quickly everyone else would do the same thing and she would think there was a system-wide virus and freak the out each time. That or making a small script to make CMD windows constantly open over and over. She never figured out it was us, to be honest. She also got fired after the first year because she hadn't taught us much of anything. Story 60. In school we had a OneDrive account specifically for school. I would sign into this account at home and upload games and various funny programs to it. Playing COD Zombies in school was amazing. Story 61. Our group did a lot of stupid stuff in further education. For instance, setting an entire row of monitors to full-screen images of Nick Cage to distract the lecturers, or playing a portable hack of CS Source on LAN. One time we got told to stop playing games and do our spreadsheets, ended up playing an elaborate game of Battleship using MS Excel. Staff fought back with screen monitoring software, which we learned to bypass by ended the process in Task Manager and temporarily renaming the softwares folder so it couldn't launch until we wanted it to. They were so confused. Also in high school did a lot of messing around with bat scripts. There was one that just produced random characters to the console super fast. We liked to pretend it was some malicious program to freak the teachers out. Story 62. I remember when I was in primary school, they had computers to allow students to just surf the web to do research. Most people used it to check in on their Facebook accounts as it was very popular at that time. However, the school used some sort of system to block many of the websites that are either shady or related to games. My 12-year-old self loved to play any sort of games, so I thought of an idea to bring a flash drive containing flash games such as Boxhead and many more games from Y8. I did that every day during my break for quite some time and eventually got caught. They confiscated my 2 GB flash drive and told my parents about it. Story 63. A mate of mine ran a program on his account that found out all accounts on the school network via brute force. Found one called Test Staff and guessed the password Test Staff. We dicked around with it, turning off people's internet and stuff. Story 64 loaded the multiplayer of Halo CE onto flash drives and would play it during our health sciences class. Teacher gave 0 because we were students just in there to fill our time senior year instead of graduating early. Story 65. We tortured the computers in the library pretty bad. 2 instances. I remember one. In the olden days, Ethernet was over coax cables, not Cat5. Each computer was connected with a thick coax cable through a T connector. When you get to the last computer in the chain, the empty connector needs to be capped off with a terminator, otherwise the signal quality would plummet enough to make the connection useless. We stole it. They had no idea how to fix it, but we were nice and returned it too. The computers were running Windows 95 YEP old, which was not a particularly secure operating system. To rectify this and prevent kids from hosing the machine every day, there was some crummy system protection anti-software installed which prevent access to the control panel. Well, it turns out that if you enter Windows Help and search for Control Panel, there's a button which conveniently opens it up for you. It still worked. So we did the most reasonable thing for high school freshmen, set a password, protected the password was the letter A, we're not monster screensaver with a 1-second timeout displaying the text libraries. The machine was down for weeks. Story 66. University network. For some reason, a student, or a professor perhaps, who knows, publicly shared no password a folder full of with the entire network, and he had writing permissions enabled for everyone. So one by one, I went through all files and censored them using the Photoshop mosaic filter. Story 67. Not me but my friend. The teacher had an active computer next to her, but she wasn't using it because she was grading notes. She was explaining stuff to several other students, and my friend snuck up on the computer and went on YouTube and play videos. If I remember correctly, he even searched for. All the teacher had to do was to turn around and hell get caught. He didn't. Story 68. We had a computer room with maybe 20 computers in it in primary school. Now somehow this 12-year-old kid figured out some script that could shut down any of the other computers in the room if you knew what number the computer was seriously impressive for a 12-year-old. Glad he taught me how to do it.